Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we're going to continue our look at the complete history of the Pokemon trading card game. We're going to be looking at EX Team Magma versus Team Aqua, the first great EX set. Now, we've looked at a couple of EX sets so far over the last few weeks. We've looked at EX Ruby versus Sapphire. We've looked at EX Sandstorm, we've looked at EX Dragon, all fun sets, all decent sets. None of those sets really set the competitive world on fire. This was the first EX expansion that really made a difference competitively. Not to say the others didn't, but I'm saying this really transformed the metagame. And if we look at the 2004 World Championships, this set absolutely dominated the top decks. By the time 2005 Worlds rolled around, yes, things had changed a little bit, but in 2004, this was the set. I should say, as always, do spam that like button, pop some comments down below, let me know that these videos are appreciated and need to continue. So it was released in Japanese on October the 24th, 2003, and it made its way out to US, Europe, etc. on March the 15th, 2004. And as the name might suggest, it was very much a set based around Team Magma and Team Aqua, who were of course the bad guys in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire respectively. Now, this was a set that actually brought owners' Pokemon back into the game for the first time, well, certainly since Wizards of the Coast gave up the game and Pokemon got it back. It also introduced dual-type Pokemon for the first time, hence introduced, but it wasn't like we would necessarily think. You see, there were only 12 of them, they were all hollow, and they were all part darkness. So, Team Aqua's Kyogre, water darkness, Team Magma's Groudon, fighting darkness, and so it goes on. And it is important to note here that this really was a Team Aqua and Team Magma set. There were 8 random basic Pokemon, including Squirtle, that weren't Aqua or Magma, and there was a single Raichu being the only evolved non-Aqua, non-Magma Pokemon. Other than that, all of the Pokemon in the set were actually Team Aqua or Team Magma. And according to the lovely folks over at Bulbapedia, a rather nice site that I use for research and you should too, this was the final set that used e-reader compatibility. So this was where you could swipe the cards through the e-reader and they would give you some information. Now, this is a slight misnomer because of course they took most of the functionality away after Skyridge. After Skyridge, all we've actually had is Pokedex entries anyway, but you could still scan them through your e-reader and get yourself the Pokedex entry. Of course, when they introduced the e-reader compatibility, they said that they had to drop to 9 cards per booster pack because of the increased cost of using the dot code technology, and that made perfect sense. Of course, they didn't actually raise us up to 10 cards per pack until we got to Diamond and Pearl quite a few sets later, so whoopsie on that one. Now, speaking of Skyridge, it was also the first set since Skyridge to have a box topper, but it was different to the ones we'd had before. There was only one rather than a choice of 4. It was regular size rather than oversize. And it was the secret rare Absol that actually appeared in the set as well. We did have a box topper, but it wasn't like the ones we'd seen before. For anyone that's wondering, there were 2 secret rares in the set in total. One was the aforementioned Absol, and the other was Jirachi. Now, we did have a pre-release card here. It was Team Aqua's Cacnea. Cool. I have little to say about that, I'm afraid. And we did have a couple of theme decks, which you should be delighted to hear were Team Magma and Team Aqua. Now, like we saw before, they came with coins, and if we start off with Team Aqua, I've got a kid called Archie, we're going to start with Team Aqua, you can see that you actually get a Team Aqua coin, which is rather lovely, and you get yourself a Holo Team Aqua's Walrein, and 2 non-holo Team Aqua's Kyogre. Very interesting to note that Kyogre only exists as a holo in the set proper, so the non-holo is exclusive to this deck. Similarly, moving over to Team Magma, you get the Team Magma coin, you get a holo Team Magma's Aggron, and 2 non-holo Team Magma's Groudon. Again, the non-holo being exclusive to the theme deck. In the set proper, you could only get the holo version. Now, in terms of the most expensive card in the set, weirdly, looking around, it seems to be Sceptile EX coming in at $70, even though that wasn't a particularly great card. Now, there are a bunch of EXs that will set you back about $50. Suicune and Raikou both come in about $50. They're your legendary beasts. And similarly, we got some first partner Pokemon in Blaziken and Swampert that really were very good cards that will come in at about $50. Sceptile is a very popular Pokemon though, so maybe that explains it. And in terms of the EXs, there were 7 new EXs. These are an exception, incidentally, to all the new cards are Aqua and Magma. These were not Aqua or Magma, but their EXs are a little bit different. They're off to the side, shall we say. Interesting to note that none of the EXs were Aqua or Magma. We got, in alphabetical order, Blaziken, which was awesome, more on that in a moment, Cradily, Entei, Raikou, the aforementioned Sceptile, which is kind of expensive, but it was a fringe deck, Suicune, that was pretty good, and Swampert, that was very, very good. Now, moving into the best cards, we really have to start off with Magma. And we'll get to the deck in a moment, but what happened in 2004 was we had our first World Championships. And back then, Japanese players and American and European players didn't really talk to each other like that. So we didn't really know what the Japanese were planning. Well, they were planning Team Magma. Everyone in the US was running around with their Blaziken decks, and Japan came over with Team Magma and just took down the tournament. Now, it is worth noting that Chris Fulop did make the finals with Blaziken, but the big story of Worlds 2004 was the Team Magma deck, which really did come out of nowhere and absolutely crush. Now, I have done a video about this deck that goes into it in a lot of detail, shows you the full deck list, etc. I will link it in the description. But the big bad card in the deck was Team Magma's Groudon. Now, it had the Pokebody Power Saver. As long as the number of Pokemon in play that has Team Magma in its name is 3 or less, Team Magma's Groudon can't attack. So it basically forced you to play a Team Magma deck, or get lucky and be playing against a Team Magma deck. And then for 2 energy, it did 20 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. And for 3 energy, if the defending Pokemon has at least 2 damage counters on it, it does 70. Otherwise, it only did 50. Pretty big, pretty powerful attacks at the time. Now, that was, of course, not the only Team Magma card we had in there. We also had Team Magma Zangoose. Now, it had Call for Family to let you search for a colorless basic Pokemon or a basic Pokemon with Team Magma in its name and put it on the bench. And then for 3 colorless energy, you did 10 damage for each Pokemon in play with Team Magma in its name. So, of course, here your goal would be to just get 6 Team Magma Pokemon out, hit 60 damage for 3 energy. Doesn't sound amazing now, at the time it was far, far better. And then you had Team Magma's Camerupt with the Poke Power Overheat, and this was huge. Once during your turn, you may search your discard pile for a basic energy and attach it to Team Magma's Camerupt. Put 2 damage counters on Team Magma's Camerupt, but it can't be used if affected by a special condition. And then for 3 energy, you did 50 damage and moved a fire energy from Team Magma's Camerupt to one of your benched Pokemon. So you could get the energy on there using Overheat and then do a bunch of damage while moving energy to something like, I don't know, let's say a Groudon. Now, having mentioned Camerupt, this seems like a good time to mention Team Magma's Claydol. You see, it had the Poke Power Magma Switch. Once during your turn, you may move an energy card attached to your Pokemon with Team Magma in its name to another of your Pokemon. So, of course, you accelerate energy to Camerupt, and then you can move it over to whichever Pokemon you want. And I know we usually do Pokemon then Trainer / Energy, but there were some really good support cards for Magma as well. Team Aqua did have equivalent cards. The problem is that Team Aqua just was nowhere near as good as Team Magma. This really was a Team Magma set, and it had some Team Aqua Pokemon in there as well that I could feel like they were joining the party. So we had Magma Conspirator. It was a supporter card, and you search your deck for up to 2 in any combination of basic Pokemon with Team Magma in its name and basic energy. So we could get either your basic Magma Pokemon or your basic energy. Really nice for getting set up. We also had Team Magma Ball, which let you flip a coin. If heads, search your deck for a Pokemon with Team Magma in its name and put it in your hand. If tails, you still got to search your deck for a Pokemon with Team Magma in its name, but it had to be a basic. If you wanted a basic, it's got your back. If you wanted an evolution, you had to flip a heads. Still very nice for helping you get set up, mind you. And then we had Magma Energy here, which was... and we saw quite a lot of these back in the day. It was a double energy. It could only be attached to a Team Magma Pokemon, and it was fighting and or darkness, but 2 energy at a time. Now, you did have to discard it at the end of your turn, which is a little bit sad, but then again, it wasn't the end of the world, because of course, we had plenty of Pokemon which could use 2 energy. Groudon could attack for 2 energy, and Camerupt could accelerate energy to itself and then attack with Team Magma Energy. Of course, between Camerupt / Claydol and Team Magma Energy, you can start to see quite quickly how this deck got very, very good very, very quickly. Oh yeah, and we also had Maxi. Maxi was a great card, which did kind of get reprinted later on. You see, Maxi is a supporter card that lets you search your hand or discard pile for a Pokemon with Team Magma in its name and put it onto your bench, and then put 2 damage counters on it. The thing is, this wasn't just limited to basic Pokemon, so you could put down your Claydol or your Camerupt just straight away, straight off the bat using Maxi. That was kind of a little bit broken, in a good way, if you were playing Team Magma decks. Now, there were some of the EXs that were also extremely good. Swampert EX came out as a very, very good card. For 1 colorless energy, you did 20 damage, plus 20 more for each basic energy attached to Swampert, but not used to pay for this attack, up to a maximum of 80 more damage, 100 damage in total. But of course, let's not forget that back in EX Ruby and Sapphire, we got the Swampert that once during your turn, you could attach a water energy from your hand to your active Pokemon. Oh, look, ladies and gentlemen, look how these two work rather nicely together indeed. And along very similar lines, there was Blaziken EX that came along in this set. And Blaziken, 2 energy, 30 damage, flip a coin, if heads, 20 more damage. If tails, it only does 30, but you also get burn. And 4 energy, you discarded 2 fire energy from Blaziken and did 100 to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Hitting 100 to the bench in 2004 was a little bit over the top good. And again, you would combine this with the Blaziken from EX Ruby and Sapphire, which allowed you to attach a fire energy from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon once during your turn. So we had the first part of Pokemon back in EX Ruby and Sapphire, and then they got EXs in Team Magma versus Team Aqua that turned them into really good decks. The other EX that was pretty gosh darn good and did get chucked into a bunch of decks was Suicune EX. For 1 water energy, choose one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Do 10 to that Pokemon. You may move an energy card from that Pokemon to another of your opponent's Pokemon. It's fine. It was pretty good for a bit of disruption. But for 3 energy, you did 50 damage, returning all basic energy cards from Suicune EX to your hand. doing 10 damage for each energy returned, and this would also fit very nicely into those Swampert decks. Now, the only real Team Aqua card that saw a whole bunch of play was probably Team Aqua's Manectric. I am reaching a little bit here. Frankly, ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't a phenomenal set for Team Aqua. But it was both a lightning and darkness type. And once during your turn, you may move any number of basic energy cards from one of your Pokemon with Team Aqua in its name to another of your Pokemon. And for free energy, you did 50 damage to the active and 10 damage to each benched Pokemon. It was fine. I mean, it was used in Blaziken purely because Blaziken could only attach to benched Pokemon. So what you would do is you would use Blaziken to attach to Team Aqua's Manectric, and then Team Aqua's Manectric would move the energy up to your active Blaziken, so you could attach to Blaziken without having to get Blaziken into the active. So it did work in that regard. Sceptile EX, you could include on the list of good cards from the set, but it is a little bit of a reach. Sceptile EX, for one, it was a rare Pokemon that actually had 3 attacks, which is interesting. 1 Grass Energy, remove 4 damage counters from each of your Pokemon with Grass Energy attached. If they've got less than 4, remove all of them. 3 Energy, 40 damage plus Poison, and you stop your opponent's active Pokemon retreating. And 5 Energy, 100, but you can't use it next turn. It was alright. Really, though, this was an attacker in Mucky X decks. Mucky X, when it was active, you ignored all Poke Powers and Poke Bodies. Really, Sceptile was a decent attacker in Mucky X decks when you got to the point where Muck couldn't be in the active anymore. Not much more than that. I do like Sceptile EX, I think it's a fun card, but honestly, whenever I look at Sceptile decks, or deck lists from back in the day, I go, well, it's kind of more of a Muck deck, really, isn't it? Now, in terms of non-Pokemon, your trainers, your energy, etc., Double Rainbow Energy was a very, very good card that we got in the set. It was a special energy, which counts as 2 Rainbow Energy, any 2 energy, but it can only be attached to an evolved non-EX Pokemon, and damage done to your opponent's Pokemon by the Pokemon with Double Rainbow Energy is reduced by 10. So it only works for an evolved Pokemon, it reduces damage done by 10, but it's any 2 energy. It was really good in that Nidoqueen deck that we looked at a little while ago that did go and win Worlds over in 2005. Yeah, it was pretty gosh darn good. Now, Team Aqua's Hideout did make its way into a few decks. Team Aqua's Hideout was the one that increased retreat cost of non-Team Aqua Pokemon by 1 colourless energy. It was really good in Mucky X decks because you were turning off Poke Powers. This was more disruption. That was fun. But it actually did make it into the Bright Aura deck that did very well at Worlds in 2005. Similarly, Team Magma's Hideout was also a very good card. If a basic Pokemon that didn't have Team Magma in its name came into play, you put 1 damage counter on that Pokemon. Now, this did work really nicely with the Shiftry EX that would come later, specifically the one from Crystal Guardians, because there were actually a couple. That had a Pokebody whereby if your opponent's Pokemon uses a Poke Power, you put 2 damage counters on it, and it had an attack for 2 energy that did 30 to a Pokemon, or 50 if they had damage on. So clearly Team Magma's Hideout was really good here. And it also worked nicely with Absol EX, which would come along later on in Power Keepers, because it had a Poke Power that let you move 3 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another, and an attack that did 30 to the active and 10 to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon that already had damage counters on. So when you saw Pokemon like that that really needed to have damage counters on, it was very much worth bringing out Team Magma's Hideout. We could also give love here to Jewel Ball, and I think we really should. Jewel Ball was a great card. Flip 2 coins. For each head, you find a basic Pokemon from your deck, and you put it onto your bench. And this was the engine for a lot of decks for a very long time. Well, as long as it was legal for tournament play. This was an extremely good card that saw a huge amount of play. And honestly, if we're talking about top decks from this set, we've got to just talk about Magma Spirit. Magma Spirit won the World Championships back in 2004, but it was actually piloted by Sugiyoshi Yamato, who went undefeated. He didn't just win Worlds, he won every game and won Worlds. It really was a phenomenal deck. You had Groudon as your big bad main attacker. You had Camerupt to accelerate energy, Claydol to move it to where you needed it to be, Zangoose to help yourself get set up, and like I say, Groudon to do a huge amount of damage. And then you had all of your tricks like Team Magma Ball and Maxi and Team Magma's Conspirator, and of course, let's not forget Magma Energy. And we didn't mention earlier that Groudon is actually a dual-type Pokemon, so you were hitting both Fighting and Darkness weakness where appropriate. It was a rather phenomenal deck, and it wasn't just in Masters where this dominated. This really was a very heavy Japanese tournament when you look at the top cut, because people just did not see this coming. And it is worth pointing out that in 2004, Japan won all 4 age divisions, and certainly in Masters, 3 of the top 4 were Japanese players. Yeah, they did pretty well. Now, Rocky Beach was a junior finalist deck back in 2004 based around Swampert, and this was another deck that really came around because of Team Magma versus Team Aqua. We had both the Swampert, the EX as your main attacker, and the Swampert from Ruby and Sapphire, which helped to accelerate energy. And then we had the aforementioned Suicune, which also came out as a really nice attacker as well. And that Magneton we've mentioned a couple times to make sure you've always got the energy you need to attach. And then the other big deck from this set really was Blaziken Tech. This was a deck that Chris Fulop used to get into the final of the World Championships, being taken down by Yamato and his Team Magma deck. And again, it was a double Blaziken deck. EX as your main attacker, non-EX to accelerate a bit of energy. Then, of course, using Team Aqua's Manectric to move that energy over. You would use Rayquaza EX as an attacker, the one from EX Dragon that we mentioned last time round. It could do huge damage, discard all Fire or Lightning attached to Rayquaza, 40 times the amount of Fire or Lightning energy discarded, and it really was nice as just a, oh, didn't see that coming, that's really good kind of attacker, a big finisher if you will. But the fact of the matter is, this was just a very good deck that could not stand up to Team Magma, not when it got to the final. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, a really good set that brought in some really good cards and really dominated the 2004 World Championships. Yes, there would be other EX sets that would come along later that would even eclipse this one, but at the time, this was a very big deal. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what you think about this, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, me nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of games that don't have Pokemon in, but are pretty gosh darn good nonetheless. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.